Today, I'm delighted to say that we are in the grandstand with a hot Australian prospect trying to work his way into Formula One, Oscar Piastri. How are you today, Oscar?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think you're in your hotel room. Is that right? Are you in Bahrain right now?
Yeah, correct. So I'm already out here in Bahrain, trying to get used to the time zone, and yes, just enjoying life in the hotel at the moment.
And any quarantine restrictions? Are you straight into it and you just have to go into the social bubbles of the Formula Series?
Well, everyone on arrival has to get a COVID test when they land at the airport, and then you basically self-quarantine until you get the results of that, which is usually about 12 hours later. All good, negative result, and now I'm free to roam around the hotel. Probably won't be making too many ventures into the outer world of Bahrain just to stay safe. But I can go and use the gym, so that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it sounds like you're going to have a terrific time there, but we want to go into this weekend, we want to go into this season, but before we go into that, I want to just dive into your backstory a little bit. You seem to have the typical, if that's the right word, backstory for the Australian racer, that incredibly successful in karting, seeming to have a lot of talent, and then confined by the world of kangaroos and drop bears and needing to get out to Europe. Is that pretty much the measure of it?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. Yeah, so there's the long story and the short story. The longer story is I started racing remote control cars first in Australia when I was about 6 or 7, and then moved into karting when I was 9 or 10 roughly, then raced karts in Australia till I was about 14 or 15, and then moved over to Europe at the start of 2016, so just before my 15th birthday, been over in Europe ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. And just for the benefit of anybody watching or listening, what is a drop bear for us non-Australians?
It's it doesn't exist, so it's not actually a thing, but it's kind of like a funny story that Australians tell tourists to scare them. But yeah, they don't actually exist, so no need to worry.
I don't think I've ever heard an Australian actually admit that they don't exist. I think you're breaking some sort of code.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in Australian culture for longer than a few weeks. So, yeah, it's kind of wearing off a bit.
I'm so happy to see you got in via RC cars, because I'm a big sort of radio controlled cars and slot car fan. So I was just wondering, what brands were you racing? Do you still get to race them any time now, or you just fill up with real driving?
I haven't raced an RC car for a long time now, probably close to 10 years, I would say, which feels a bit weird to say as a 19-year-old. But yeah, I used to race mainly X-Ray was the brand I used, partially because the local track that my dad and I went to, the sort of track limits, I guess you want to call it, were wooden boards that were bolted into the ground. So the X-Ray was always pretty strong, which was always good when you're a 7 or 8 year old and you don't really care about crashing.
Yeah.
I always use X-Ray pretty much.
Your crashing you needed to worry about a little bit more when you came to Europe, you came to Britain, and you raced with Arden, Christian Horner's team, for a little bit, but you didn't join the Red Bull junior driver team. You joined the Renault Sport Academy. Was there a bidding war, or was it a choice of yours, or how did that come about?
So yeah, my place in the Renault Sport Academy, now the Alpine Academy, was off the back of my former Renault Euro Cup title. The prize for winning the championship is a spot in the academy if you choose to take it, which we were very happy to take. There wasn't really any link through Arden with any sort of junior teams at all. It was all purely just off results. That's kind of how I got myself into the academy, and now entering my second year.
And did you have a relationship with Christian Horner or anything like that? Was the conversations to go down the Red Bull route? Your career obviously is going down the Alpine route now, but was a parallel universe existing with Red Bull?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think I've probably spoken about 5 or 10 words to Christian Horner, but that's only because of Mark Webber, who's my manager now. Obviously, they're very close friends, so yeah, that's really the only contact I've had with him, just saying hi when I've been standing next to Mark, pretty much. And yeah, so there was never really any sort of association with Red Bull at all.
No, that's understandable. So I think it's 2018. You had a test with, was it Trident in the GP3 machinery as it was back then, but you didn't jump to GP3 for the following season. Was that a conscious decision, or was that just a seat didn't present itself? What was the reason behind going a different way?
Well, basically, that was off the back of my rookie year in Formula Renault with Arden. Wasn't the greatest of years. I think we struggled quite a bit as a team, and obviously being a rookie in that category is pretty tough. And also Arden were only in their second year in the championship in a car that had been around for sort of close to 10 years or so. So we were on the back foot compared to some of the other teams. And then the following year, it got announced sort of at the end of 2018 that there was going to be a new Formula Renault car. So my results were sort of good enough to warrant a step up to GP3 and then renamed F3. But it probably wouldn't have been in the most competitive of teams. And we were sort of weighing up whether to do a second year in Formula Renault, albeit with a new car, or jump straight into F3. In the end, it was a conscious decision to stay in Formula Renault and sort of develop my skills and try and win the championship in 2019, which I did. And yeah, I think that was by far the better decision to make. And yeah, I mean, also doing the GP3 testing was also to get a bit of a taste of a faster car as well. We're at no stage where we fully committed to going to F3 or GP3, and then backpedal was weighing up both options.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the championship win, and crucially, that championship win was over your fellow Academy driver, Viktor Martens. Is that something you like to remind him of if he gets a little bit too smart on the media days?
Not too much, to be honest. Like, it's actually a bit strange. Like, during that season, I wasn't in the Academy and Viktor was, and we were in different teams, and I was driving with R-Race, who Viktor had left the year before. So we were kind of pretty big rivals, and it was us to the death for the championship basically. So we didn't actually really speak that much, and then fast forward sort of 12 or 18 months, and we were in a hotel room together in Tenerife, just us two. We've never really spoken to each other, but we've raced each other for probably 3 years. So, but yeah, he's a really nice guy, very fast, obviously. So yeah, there's not too much banter about it, but I'm sure if he starts getting a bit loud, then I'll have to remind him of it.
And I mentioned Mark Webber, obviously famous F1 driver from Australia, but now being your manager. So how did that come about?
So basically, it was through a mutual contact. So when I moved out of karts into cars, I was contacted by someone called Simon Sosterik, who has worked with Mark through his Red Bull days and his Porsche days in LMP1 on sort of the physical side of things. And he was very keen to work with me. And at that point, I didn't have a trainer or anything like that, so it naturally made sense to go with that. And then, once it was sort of towards the back end of my Formula Renault title winning year, we realised things were going to be getting a bit more serious, going to be stepping up onto the F1 weekends for 2020, and we needed someone big in my corner, managing the behind-the-scenes things. And obviously we knew that Mark was sort of in that business. We knew he'd been managing Mitch Evans, and then having that mutual contact through Simon made a lot of sense. So we explored that, and happily came to terms, and here we are, starting our second year working together. And
you mentioned having a trainer as well. So do you end up, does like each driver have like a whole crew of people looking after them, like a manager, a trainer? Do you have someone like looking after the food as well, or is that covered by the trainer?
I would say most drivers probably have two people. I think especially at F2 level, everyone has a trainer that comes to the track with them. Renault in previous years had a shared physio between their academy drivers on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So this year I've got my own physio, Kim Keedle, who's been working with Roman Grosjean for the last 3 years. I would say most people probably have a manager, their trainer or physio, and maybe someone else that they've had coming to the races with them for a long time, or a parent. I would say probably 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, a nice support network then. So FIA F3 last year was a grueling, very competitive season, but you won out. What are your reflections on that season last year?
It was just a crazy year for so many reasons. Obviously, went to Bahrain for the pre-season test about this time last year, expecting to come back for the race in 2 weeks. And then, I went to Australia for the Australian Grand Prix and witnessed the whole cancelling of the race unfold. I was actually there with the Renault F1 team, and I think I got an email at 3 a.m. on the Friday morning saying, "Don't come to the track today, nothing's going to be happening." So that was pretty crazy. And then I spent 3 months in Australia in somewhat of a lockdown, which ironically is actually the longest time I've spent in Australia for the last 6 years. So I got to spend that all at home with my family, which was really cool. And, some kind of have a normal life for 3 months. Okay, we were in lockdown, so it wasn't that normal, but, not having any race cars to worry about, not worry about, but, have no race cars to deal with, and pretty much just focus on, spending time with my family and friends when we were allowed to. So that was actually quite a pleasant thing to come from lockdown. I was also supposed to be doing school exams throughout sort of the first 2 or 3 rounds of the season, and that all ended before the season ended up starting. So that was another unexpected positive. And then, the season itself, once it got started, was pretty nuts. 9 race weekends in 11 weekends, so only 2 weeks off. Was pretty grueling. It was also very exciting and fun, to be honest. Even just spending I think we had 2 back-to-back weekends where we stayed in the same place, so Austria and Silverstone. Even just sort of spending 2 weeks in Austria, okay, we weren't really allowed to go and do much, but going cycling and sort of exploring the outside world in between race weekends was nice. Then that's not even getting into the actual racing part of the season. So, the racing part of the season was pretty nuts as well. Obviously, had an awesome first weekend, winning on debut, and a good first 3 rounds, really. And then, after that, started to feel the wrath of some DRS issues and some technical issues. We had some DRS issues in the first 3 rounds as well, but they more prominently reared their head from sort of round 4 and 5 and 6. Got another win in round 6 at Barcelona off the back of a really good first couple of corners, which was a much needed confidence boost, particularly after all the sort of issues we've been having that were out of our control. And then, the final 3 rounds, Spa was a pretty average weekend. Monza was by far the craziest weekend I've ever had in my life, regardless of whether it was in motorsport or out of motorsport. Started off poorly in qualifying with a questionable grid penalty and then coming from 15th to 3rd. and then the next day having a sort of a similar trajectory and then getting taken out of the race. So that was a tough one. Then getting another grid penalty that I also didn't necessarily agree with, but it doesn't really matter anymore. Spiced up the action for Mugello, that's for sure. And yeah, Mugello was crazy intense. Had a pretty poor qualifying. Missed out on reverse grid pole for race 2 by 1 position. And yeah, the final race sort of went into it, accepting that I was in a pretty tough position. I was starting six spots behind my championship rival, equal on points. And yeah, he crashed out in the first corner. So kind of handed the championship to me on a bit of a platter. I still had to watch out for Cher, but yeah, from that point on, I pretty much managed it and ended a pretty crazy season, which sounds extremely long, but when you think about it, it was only 11 weeks. So yeah, it was a very hectic season.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there your qualifying, you were starting to struggle towards the end of the season. Was that because of the nerves? Were you starting to really feel the pressure of the championship campaign ramping up then?
Not particularly, no. I think, yeah, qualifying wasn't exactly my strength for most of the year, I would say. I think the first sort of 6 rounds I was, qualifying anywhere, usually 3rd or 4th on the grid, so not bad by any means. But when your teammate's getting 3 poles in a row, it's, obviously doesn't quite look as good. And then, to be honest, the last 3 rounds of the year were not particularly related to me. Spa was some pretty extraordinary circumstances where there was some major traffic for our first push lap, and normally we have sort of 2 sets of tyres. So first push lap of the first set of tyres, usually doesn't mean that much, but after that first push lap, it poured with rain. So that was the only chance we got, and I'd started the lap way too close to someone in front of me, so it was a very compromised lap. So I think I started 9th or 10th for that one. Monza, again, was a complete shambles. I think it was something like 15 out. Mine, I think I qualified 12th anyway because of all the traffic and stuff like that, not through a lack of pace. I think after the first set of tyres, I was 2nd or 3rd. And then, also copped a grid penalty for, an interesting reason. And then Mugello was that one was definitely me. I'd say it was nerves, but just didn't quite hook the lap up together. And to be honest, it was just a super tight qualifying session. Like, I think I was only 2.5 tenths off pole position. And I was P11 at a 5-place grid on top of that, so I had to start 16th. To be honest, I wouldn't have said it was bad. There was always a few things that were going on that were sort of out of my control in probably half the session. But it's something I'm definitely looking forward to trying to improve this year, and hopefully I can get a pole position. I'm pretty confident we'll get that done.
Awesome. Yeah. But obviously the main thing is you did get it done. You won the championship. So 1 and done for F3, and you're in good company with that, with like Charles Leclerc and George Russell both winning GP3 on their rookie season. Now it's F2. George Russell did it in 1 year. How are you feeling about it? Confident? Yeah,
I am confident. I think, staying on with Prema is good for a variety of reasons. Obviously, I know a decent amount of the team already, so I don't have to adapt to a new environment all that much. Okay, most of the team is new people, but some of the people are still there and still going to the same workshop for all the meetings. Obviously they won Drivers' Championship with Mick last year and the Team's Championship, so it's pretty hard to argue that there's a better spot to be on the grid. I'm aware that George and Charles managed to win it in their first year. I don't think it's going to be that easy. Also in George's case, there was a brand new car for everyone. So that probably changed a little bit in terms of for the rookies. It probably made life a little bit easier. But Yeah, I think I'm in a good place. Testing was pretty positive overall. We were constantly improving, which was the main thing. And yeah, we'll find out where everyone really sits at about 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, I think, which is when our first qualifying is. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we can be fighting up front.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing you up there as well. So, we all know Formula Racing is a very tough gig. One of your title rivals from last year, Logan Sargent, is sadly not going to be taking a step up to F2 because he ran out of budget. So, how much of a talent is F2 going to be missing by Sargent's absence this year, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty sad and unfortunate that Logan's going to be on the grid this year. Yeah, obviously I don't know the full story of what happened there, but yeah, obviously he was my main rival throughout all of last year. Okay, finished third in the championship, but it was clearly us two fighting for pretty much the whole year. And yeah, I've raced Logan for I think 3 out of my 4 years in cars. I raced him in F4, my first year of Renault, F3. So I've known him for a while now, and we're good friends. So yeah, it's pretty sad that he's not going to be on the grid. And yeah, hopefully he can get back into something. Whether he comes back to Europe or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think he would have been a good addition to the F2 grid.
Yeah, as do we. So hopefully he can find a route at some point. So Renault, pretty public at the end of last season, they felt that a lot of their academy drivers had slightly underperformed in F2 and things. Are you feeling that pressure for this season? Is that something that plays on your mind in terms of hitting performance targets?
Not really, no. Off the back of 2 championships, so I think my side of things have been pretty solid. And now that I'm in F2, there's not really a set performance target per se. Firstly, I've got to do well, which is the first thing, and do well enough to, if a seat doesn't open up naturally, then I've got to try and pry one open with my results. So, yeah, there's not really a sort of set target anymore. It's, this is the final step. We're all trying to get to F1, and we've all got to prove in every way we can that we deserve to be there. So, even if I'm beating both Christian and Joe in the academy, if we're 7th, 8th, and 9th in the championship, then none of us are going to be in F1. So, I've got to be pushing the boundaries and raising the bar, and trying to prove that I'm best in the grid, not just in the academy.
How are you finding the F2 car? Any big differences to the F3? We've heard a lot of people saying about the new hard tyre is quite difficult to get on top of, plus the way that the 18-inch rims affect the car compared to the old 13s.
Yeah, it's a pretty different beast to F3, to be honest. And even the car I drove before F2 was an F1 car as well. So that was, a bit of a whirlwind going from a slower car to the fastest car back to somewhere in the middle. But yeah, the car's pretty different, particularly in race trim. It's extremely heavy. I think our minimum weight is like 50 kilos heavier than F1, which is pretty remarkable. So yeah, you can definitely feel the sort of extra weight. It's about 100 kilos heavier than an F3 car. Also 600 horsepower with a turbo that's you can definitely feel when it kicks in. You don't have much power before it kicks in, but you've definitely got a lot once it does. And also just managing the sort of longer races. The pre-season test was the first time I got to experience sort of a full feature race sim with a somewhat live pit stop, and doing hard and then soft and vice versa. So just managing the tyres for an extended period of time is pretty challenging. I'd say a bigger challenge than F3 for sure. I'll find out in a proper race situation this weekend, obviously. But yeah, also the 18-inch rims. Obviously, I didn't drive the car on 13-inch tyres, but the car is very snappy. So yeah, if you see people having big moments on TV or on the onboard cameras with sort of no warning, then it's definitely happens, and it's something very tricky to try and manage. So yeah, it's definitely a handful of a car, and yeah, I think that's why it's so exciting and produces such unpredictable racing, because it's very hard to get on top of, and whoever gets on top of it most often is going to be the people that win the championships.
Do you like the new weekend format that we've got coming up? Obviously, only 8 race weekends per year for the season rather than the old 12, but with 3 races. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it's an interesting new format. Obviously, I haven't experienced it yet, so I can't say whether I like it more or less yet. I think the idea of 2 reverse grid races is unique, definitely. I think it provides quite a lot of risk for whoever qualifies on pole. Obviously, they'll be having to start P10 for race 1, sort of back in the middle of the pack where all the carnage is, and obviously if everyone's starting just outside the top 10, they're going to be doing everything they can to get into the top 10 to try and get in that reverse 10 for race 2. So I think, yeah, we'll be seeing quite a few people qualifying at the front having pretty tough weekends as a result of that, I would say. But yeah, I think it places even more emphasis on being fast in races and not so much qualifying, and also staying clean, particularly in race 1. You know, it's for everyone in the top 10. It's going to be about survival and making sure you fit in the top 10, and yeah, just providing racecraft as well. You know, for people trying to make up positions. With 2 reverse grid races, it's going to be all about trying to capitalize on somewhat slower people in front of you, I guess. So yeah, I'm hoping that plays into my strengths. I think that was definitely one of my strengths last year. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be exciting nonetheless. I just hope I'm on the probably lesser exciting end, to be honest, or exciting because I'm taking advantage, destroyed by it.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us as fans, we're obviously, really looking forward to 3 races in a weekend, and the reverse grids are going to be super exciting for us sitting at home to watch. But for me, the downside is obviously that you're going to less physical tracks, and Hungary for me has always been a fantastic F2 weekend. Something about the car there, just where the tyres fall off the cliff and the overtaking is always spectacular. But are there any tracks for yourself where you think, God, I really wish I was going to be racing there this year?
Yes, there's quite. Yeah, obviously our calendar is pretty heavy on Middle Eastern races and flyaways. Obviously, we're also going to Saudi, which looks like a pretty crazy layout with not a whole lot of slow corners. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's a little bit disappointing to not have more European races. I would say the European races we do have are pretty spectacular. Obviously, it's awesome we get to go back to Monaco, and Silverstone is one of my favorite tracks as well, and Monza as well. You can't take away how much history Monza has, and also in F3 it was probably a bit too crazy, but for F2 it seemed to have a good balance, with the long straights providing a lot of overtaking. So yeah, it would have been nice to particularly go to Spa. That's always a track I look forward to going to. Yeah, I think, to be honest, if you took probably half of the tracks from the F3 calendar and put them on our calendar, it would be probably the best calendar I've ever seen. So yeah, a little bit disappointed to not go to more European tracks, but I'm excited for the tracks we get to go to, and obviously going to Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Saudi as well. You don't really get to experience that very often in junior single seaters, so I'm excited to go there.
Now you've got the calendar there, and the calendar itself has many big gaps in it. You've got months without racing at some points. Is there anything that you're going to be able to do to fill the gap in there with other racing possibly, or any other track experiences?
I won't be doing any other racing, that's for sure. Probably a lot of simulator work, I would say. Obviously, stepping into F2 and also my second year in the academy, I've got more of a role in the F1 team as well. And yeah, there's quite a few simulator days planned. Also, Renault Alpine have their RS18 F1 program still running. So I know that if my results are good enough, that there's opportunities there. So I'm hoping that I can do a good enough job and fill some of my gaps with driving an F1 car, which is pretty exciting. And yeah, besides that, probably catching up on a lot of sleep. Obviously, it's a very different calendar. What I experienced last year is probably the polar opposite. So yeah, I'm sure I'll find something to fill my gaps with.
So those F1 weekends that you could possibly be shadowing in the garage, is that stuff that gets announced or scheduled at this point right before the start of the season, or is these things you find out next week? You're going to be in Spa, you'll be in the Alpine garage with Fernando and Esteban?
I think there is a few things like that planned. Obviously, I was lucky enough to go to Turkey last year with the F1 team, which was definitely a cool race to experience firsthand. Yep. And yeah, obviously COVID permitting and stuff like that, then I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure there are opportunities for that. Definitely something that we've spoken about. So yes, I think that'll also probably be able to fill in the gaps.
Speaking of filling in those gaps, we saw your Alpine Academy fellow driver, Guan Yu Zhou. He was racing in F3 Asia over the winter, winning it. Was that something that was an option for you, or was that something that you preferred not to do? Was it anything that you even had a decision over?
To be honest, it didn't even cross my mind to do that. If I was heading into my Formula Renault season, then yes, I'd probably consider it. But I've already driven that car for a year. I'm pretty happy to be racing in something faster now. So yeah, it was never anything I really considered. Obviously, I've already got sufficient points for my super license, so it's not something I need to do in that aspect. So yeah, it's for me the benefit of driving and doing that championship isn't worth firstly the cost of doing it, and yeah, obviously it's a very different car to F2, so yeah, it was never really something I've considered.
No, that's understandable. You mentioned Daniel Ricciardo, you mentioned Turkey when you were there in the Renault garage. So Ricciardo is not going to be employed by your employer anymore. Did you get any particular, I don't want to go down the Aussie route, but did you get any particular cultural or benefits from having that shared nationality from Daniel? Did you spend a lot of time with him last year?
I didn't really spend that much time with him, to be honest. The most I spoke to him was at that weekend in Turkey. Besides that, it was very difficult to sort of talk to him or anyone, to be honest, because of all the COVID bubbles and stuff like that. And obviously he's extremely busy being a very successful F1 driver. So yeah, I got to speak to him a bit at Turkey, which was really cool, and speak to him, a bit about F1, but also just general stuff as well, which was also really nice. And yeah, he's exactly as he comes across on TV and in the media. That's exactly how he is. So it was really nice to see that that's genuinely who he was. And yeah, it was really cool to be able to speak to him.
You mentioned successful drivers this year. Alpine, as they're now called, are going to have a hugely successful driver with a two-time world champion. Is there something in the academy, and that's Fernando Alonso, of course, is there something in the academy that you get to speak to the drivers? It doesn't sound like there's any sort of organised mentoring program or anything like that. Is that just when you go to the weekends, you just get to interact with them, driver to driver, on a personal level?
Yeah, there's not really sort of a organised mentoring program per se. Obviously, they're, a lot of their time is filled with being an F1 driver. And if I was in their shoes and had some fast junior drivers coming up, I wouldn't want to give them all the secrets either. So, yeah, obviously, Fernando's getting a bit older now, and obviously he's sort of had a sabbatical or semi-retirement once. So, hopefully he's, I can take his seat in a few years. And then hopefully opens me up to all the secrets of becoming world champion. But yeah, it's more on a personal level and sort of getting to see them on the weekends and stuff like that. There's not really sort of a set mentoring program.
No, well, it's been great speaking, but I've got one final question to go through. And you've spent one season with Prema, you mentioned. You've got another one this year. So how much Italian hand language can you share? Do you have any particular bits of gesturing that you can share with us that's safe for broadcast?
Just the normal Italian, what are you doing sort of gesture. But besides that, not really. Prema actually did a video on Italian hand gestures with us, which I had no idea what any of them were. Yeah, my Italian gestures haven't improved, and my Italian speaking also hasn't improved. So, yeah, no, I don't really have much more to give than that, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, from my understanding, that is pretty universal for a little bit of everything. So, yeah. Just too much oversteer, too much understeer, that'll do fine.
Exactly, yes.
Oscar, it's been great speaking to you, and thank you for joining us in the Grandstand. We wish you well for your Formula 2 season, and hopefully we can catch up with you again in the future.
Thank you very much. Thanks.